Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of our final season of Lower Decks coverage. We are covering Lower Decks Season 5, Episode 3, Best Exotic Nanite Hotel. And then for nostalgia's sake, we're also looking back at Temporal Edict. That is the 20th of August, 2020, third episode of Lower Decks Season 1. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing pretty well, Bob. Man, I want to say something. Going back and rewatching this first season, these episodes are hilarious. They came out with the guns blazing in the beginning. Good stuff.
The show pretty much always has been what it's been. Matt, to raise a question, I don't think season 5 of Lower Decks has been bad by any means. And maybe I'll feel very wrong. It'll really ramp up at the end and I'll feel really wrong. But honestly, after 3 episodes, I'm okay with the show ending now. It's pretty much made its joke. Everything feels very similar, right? It feels very much like prior seasons. We'll get to something I do like how they handled this episode, but in general, I'm maybe not as sad about Lower Decks ending as I was when its ending was announced. Do you feel that way, or do you think I'm being crazy?
It's losing its steam to some degree, yes, Bob. I feel like a lot of times with these shows, maybe with certain ones, 4 seasons is your max.
The show basically is, not in a derogatory way, but mocking and recreating 90s Star Trek. There's just only so much you can do of that.
It is moving into some of the newer Trek territory with some of the jokes, but you're right. Most of it is more towards the Trek we grew up with in the 90s, Voyager, DS9, Next Gen type stuff. And
some original series and animated series, but mostly the 90s, Next
Right.
Gen, DS9, and Voyager. And I do think there's potential for the show to playfully mock Enterprise, Discovery, Picard, but it seems they're not going to go there, which it's a choice, and I get it. I'm a little sad about it, but I get it too.
All right, Bob. So breaking into this episode, Best Exotic Nanite Hotel, what were you thinking?
I was hoping for a peanut hamper return, personally. Our favorite exocomp Starfleet defector.
Instead, we got the Nanite Glumpus, which I think is the most screen time we've ever seen of actual nanites.
To be clear, we've seen nanites before, but we've never seen a nanite glumpus before,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, big Glumpus, which if you've ever played the video game Katamari Damacy,
I have not.
it's basically this. You start off as a very small ball and you roll around and absorb everything everything you run into, you absorb. And as you absorb things, you get bigger and bigger and bigger until the ball grows to the size of an actual planet. And it's a fun little game.
That doesn't sound fun, but I'm glad it was fun for you.
Fun for me back in the day.
You get your wish of becoming a ball and rolling around and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I get my wish that Jin the Andorian returns, but in a monkey's paw fashion. She's now Mariner's evil, crazy girlfriend.
Yeah, she's evil and crazy. I was glad she was back, and I found it absolutely hilarious that they used a plot point we actually questioned all the way back in season 3 during the finale.
They were dating in season 3, and then Mariner is accused of treason in the season 3 finale, right?
Correct. And see at the end of the episode that Mariner walks by her in the cafeteria, doesn't say anything. So it's implied they broke up. We weren't sure. I think even in our coverage of the podcast.
That might be the season 4 premiere when she's back and she walks by her. But we saw her a little in the background of season 4, but the relationship was never addressed. And it turns out that it was just Mariner ghosting her. Another nice return, we've got the character Jet, who's been around the show before. Here we have him warning Poimler about Ransom and yelling, "Lost both my hands."
So the season 1 episode we're going to be covering to go along with this episode, Bob, seems to suggest that Ransom would probably protect his crew better than what we see here. Wouldn't you say?
The doc's going to grow back Jet's hands, so it's okay.
Being physically harmed, as long as it's not fatal in the Star Trek universe, is okay, right?
For the most part. Maybe there's some things they can't do, but for the most part.
You can come back from most things. So maybe there's just not as much fear of that part, but it did confuse me a little bit because I feel like this kind of clashed a little bit with Ransom in the other episode. Some aliens that show up when they finally do get to this pleasure planet, when there's the bar and everything. Did you see the Gamites?
No, and what are the Gamites? I forgot to ask you about this before we started recording.
So the Gamites, the Star Trek episode where Dax says she has to go on a date with someone, and it's a doctor, and their brain is exposed.
Interesting.
They were a Gamite.
That's a Star Trek detail that would never. Oh, I think Gallum.
We actually discussed the Gallimites on our coverage. I don't remember the specific episode. Bashir and Dax were in the conversation, and that she says she's missing a date or something with a Gallimite, or the date didn't go well with the Gallimite.
From glancing at the Galamite entry on Memory Alpha, it seems like they were mentioned in at least 3 different DS9 episodes. Matt, were you expecting Jen to die before she leaves the Cerritos, before she joins the USS Live Forever on her exciting new posting?
I mean, when I was watching the episode, I could see it happening. It seems a little too serious for Lower Decks right now.
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, it would be such a trope that they could kind of mock it.
Plenty of ways they could mock it.
I really did enjoy Jen's line to Mariner when they actually are making up, that it didn't even occur to me that she might be innocent.
Yeah, we'll use that one someday.
What's up with T'Lyn and Krog?
Well, I'm assuming she's just a fangirl, but if you look at that Krog creature thing, whatever it's supposed to be, does it not look like the rock monster that Shatner wanted to put in Star Trek V? And for the listeners, describe this thing. It's a rock monster. Imagine a rock face with really red glowing eyes and a mouth that's made of rock. It can move up and down.
Thanks for showing me this image. I'm looking at it, and I've never seen a picture of... I knew of the rock monsters that Shatner wanted to include in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Also, interesting, maybe a reference there, given that the poster for this season is modeled on the Star Trek V poster. But I didn't know pictures of it existed, so it's interesting to see it. To be honest, since I hadn't seen it, where my mind went to was the rock alien that Taika Waititi plays in Thor 3 and Thor 4.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
But speaking of references, we meet the Intrepid class USS Endeavor, so the same class as Voyager, and your prediction that I missed last week about these temporal anomalies being a reoccurring thing this season, that really paid off. We already see it in this episode, and they even have a cute little Voyager reference where the Endeavor talks about her month of health.
Yeah, Janeway would be like, talk to me when it's been a year. The big plot is a straight up copy of the whole thing from Apocalypse Now. Is this just overdone or just a common plot line that we can't help but retread?
I think it's a good common plot line, and I don't begrudge people using it. It goes back to at least Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but actually a lot further back than that, I think. I don't mind it. I do have to admit that I totally checked out on that plot of this episode.
Why don't you use it in your class, Bob? Just show it then, and you can watch it with them.
Well, Matt, I'm not teaching any science fiction classes this term, so
damn.
I couldn't justify it. I like Lower Decks a lot. This isn't meant to demean Lower Decks, but I would only ever teach one episode of Lower Decks in a class. It's too repetitive to be worth teaching more than that.
The way they get out of they're all chained up in this episode, and the way they get out is the use of Baby Will. Do you think that the writers regret using that with the current events going on today?
Well, Matt, let me respond to that by posing a philosophical question. So recently there was a scandal, I want to say it's UCLA, where 2 white students did a Halloween costume, and the guy went as Diddy and the girl went as Baby Oil. And this created a scandal for it being offensive, blackface, what have you. But it did make me wonder, is blackface less bad when it's part of a group costume where other people in the group are not doing blackface?
I really thought that because when I pictured it in my head at first, I didn't imagine them with blackface. And then you said they had blackface. I'm, oh, that's going to be bad. But part of me is, them dressing up as Diddy without blackface, them dressing up with Diddy as blackface and Baby World, that's wrong. Does that answer the question?
That's a good response. And it actually raises an interesting dimension I might be wrong about. So they blurred out the faces of both students. I assume that the white student playing Diddy was in blackface, but now I realize I don't know for sure that he was.
Oh.
I think I agree with you that if he's in blackface, it's offensive. But if he's not in blackface, but he's just, going as Diddy, that's not offensive. Maybe the answer is just that sheltered white college students need to make black friends, and they need to be comfortable enough with those black friends to go in costume with them. So if it were a black dude going as Diddy, and then it wouldn't matter who was going as the Baby Oil, could be a white girl, could be a white guy, could be an Asian guy, it wouldn't matter. That would be a better costume.
At the same time, though, making light of Diddy's crimes as a costume, not in the best taste, but I get it. I understand that people
Yeah, I thank you for saying that, Matt. And instead of getting myself into trouble, I'll just also say I get it. Moving on, Matt. Who is your character of the week for this new episode of Lower Decks?
So I got to go for Jennifer Bob, and that's for making it clear that Mariner is the only ex who did not become a mortal foe.
Yeah, that's it. That's a really good choice, Matt. I will also give it to our girl Jin the Andorian. Glad they answered our long-standing gripe for a season. Between that and between them actually making T'Lyn a character this season, those are my two big complaints with the show resolved. So props to the show.
It's like y'all were listening to our podcast. Thanks, Lower Decks writers.
Well, Matt, before we go to the season 1 episode, I did find on Reddit, so I assume this is real. Maybe it's fake, but it seems plausible. I found a list of the upcoming season 5 episodes. Do you want to run down those and speculate about any of them right quick?
Sure. So the next episode is entitled Farewell to Farms, which will be on a farm again. And if you remember, there was an episode where Boimler was farming grapes.
Obviously, it's a pun on that Dominion War episode, Farewell to Arms, which is a very familiar phrase. That's not where it comes from. But yeah.
Right. So there's been other farm-themed episodes in the past. They had been deformed in other episodes, so we'll leave it at that. Starbase.
Maybe there'll be a bit of a reference to the family episode of Next Gen where Picard goes back to the vineyard in France after Wolf 359.
That could be it. All right, Bob. Let's talk about the next episode, Starbase 80 with a question mark.
Yes.
Starbase 80. What do we know about that?
That was the bad Starbase where everything's out of date and nobody does anything that we talked about last episode that I at least had forgotten was a running gag later in the show.
And I completely forgot what it was within a week. So good. Next episode we have Gods and Angels, which that could be about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Fully Dilated, opening of a hole.
Opening of a wormhole.
Yeah, got that.
It does seem like that would probably be also having to do with all these multiple universes. That would seem to be a pretty good bet.
Then you have the episode, it's called Upper Deck.
We presume would be a focus on our Upper Decks crew on the episode. Also, there's maybe a little bit of a joke, right? Because Lower Decks is named after a season 7 episode of Next Gen that focuses on the less important characters. And so it's a nice symmetry for the Lower Decks final season to have an episode called Upper Decks, which will presumably focus on their less important characters.
Nice. I think you're right, Bob. Then we have Fissure Quest,
which also seems like Fully Dilated, probably a multiverse reference.
Correct. And then the last episode of the season will be called, in the series, will be called New Next Generation.
Oh, man. So, Matt, what do you think for the finale? Are they going to do like a time travel jump ahead, like All Good Things? Are they just going to do, oh, look, the Fantastic Four, or now I guess the Fantastic Five of our main characters are going to keep rising up the ranks, and we're maybe going to see the new Lower Deckers coming on in the last scene?
I have a feeling we're going to see a story that takes them into the future where we see what they are further down. And will Boimler be a captain? What ends up happening to Mariner? We'll get all that figured out.
Seems likely. It does seem kind of sad that I don't think I'm going to get my wish based on these titles. Maybe I could be wrong. Some of them are pretty vague, but I don't think I'm going to get my wish of parody episodes of Enterprise Discovery or Picard.
Probably not. I don't even know where I heard this, but Tawny Newsome is apparently recording for some other show they're doing that's going to focus on a resort in space.
Oh, I did hear something about that. I had heard about that resort show and then totally forgotten about it. And so the only thing that was on my radar was Starfleet Academy, which is pretty dire, pretty depressing.
Let's talk about our retro episode here, all the way back in 2020.
The Temporal Edict, episode 3 of season 1. Matt, did the title of this episode fake you out and make it seem like it was a time travel episode?
It really did, Bob. It confused me because I didn't remember them doing a lot of time travel in the first season. But then again, I may even be surprised there because I really don't remember much from the first season.
Let me hit you with 3 good jokes I really liked from early in the episode. The Klingon captain asking Captain Freeman, what is the meaning of this intense base? Then I really adored Shax going down to 10 forward, shoving Boimler aside and snapping his fiddle over his knee. That was so viscerally satisfying. God bless you, Shax. Boimler, you're the worst.
The first couple of episodes we watched this, so I have burst out laughing multiple times. So I'm telling you, the season 1 had like some gut-wrenching, gut-lapping moments. That was one of them.
And then this one is it's not as funny, haha. It's more funny, hee hee.
Yeah.
But I like talking about the concept of buffer time, which, this defines it. Tendies, isn't buffer time lying about how long it takes to do a job? And Rutherford's, no, it's creative estimating. Matt, when I was debating, I did a science fiction class a couple of years ago where I tried to survey the major science fiction franchises were, so this, Planet of the Apes, Doctor Who, etc. And I did want to do a Lower Decks episode on the first day just because they're short enough that I can show it in 20 minutes and still have time to go over the syllabus. I was debating which one to teach, and I wasn't sure if I should go with this one because this episode has such wise things to say about work in modern corporate offices, or if I should go with the season 2 finale where you kind of see the day in the life from the Vulcans, a day in the life from the Klingons, a day in the life from the Packlids. And ultimately, I went with that one because I thought it was better. Hear the different cultures in the Star Trek universe, but I did really think about doing this one as well.
Yeah, and this is an excellent episode for that because, I mean, it really made me think of my own job and what I do in my own work. It's basically if you set clear expectations and let people do their thing, and stuff is going to get done.
You're saying you identify with Mariner instead of Freeman on this issue of Buffer Time?
Oh, 100%, Bob, but I think I'm supposed to be more like Freeman.
That is what you're supposed to be as a supervisor.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Matt, so there's a lot to love about this episode, a lot that it says about contemporary work culture. Very good, very good. But we also see several times in this episode the horror of Boimler dancing. Any thoughts on that horror?
This is your thing, Bob. You seem to hate Boimler's dancing. I'm okay with it. It's pretty bad there. I mean, it doesn't.
Is that because you dance like Boimler, Matt?
I think I do dance occasionally when I'm not supposed to, just if I have a little twinge of energy running through me.
Matt, I'm going to send you a fiddle for Christmas. You can use it to compose songs about your mother.
Yeah, a little kid literally broke out a fiddle the other day, Bob, and just started playing it. No joke, it works. So it's just no surprise to me.
That little kid's name, Charlie Daniels.
We're making a deal with the devil run.
I really did enjoy the Ransom line when he's listing off horrors he's encountered, spores that make you hook up with your best friend's sister. Most of the main plot of this is Ransom and Mariner on a crystal planet in captivity. And I really did like that the Crystal Planet was going to do a Death Race 2000, but with crystal cars. That would have been fun.
These guys are obsessed with crystals. You ever met anybody that's obsessed with crystals, Bob?
Yes.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is a lot weird, yes.
I never really know what to say to them because I think it's kind of neat to look at. They're pretty.
It was really charming how Shax bonds with the crystal people by agreeing with them that their rival aliens, their enemy species, are wood-worshipping freaks.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that.
Wood's not as pretty to look at. Let me just say this, Bob. Shax was solidified early on with these episodes. These first 3 episodes, he only has a couple of lines, but man, every single one of them is a banger.
Shax and Ransom are there right from the start. It maybe takes him a little while to get the engineer, what's his name, Andy, and Tiana and Captain Freeman, but Shax and Ransom are pretty much right there from the beginning. Matt, would you like to read Mariner's great rant that she screams at Ransom at the end of the episode?
One of the more famous lines from Mariner is, "Joke's on you, man. I love the brick. It's my favorite place. Next time, I'm going to let someone kill you. I'm going to dance in your blood." It's funny. You never expect to hear that on anything Star Trek, but it fits.
Well, there is this weird undercurrent of violence a little bit to Mariner early in the show. I mean, literally the first time we see her is her accidentally stabbing Boimler.
Right.
Yeah. I enjoy that. Well, we have the famous ending of this, Matt. It definitively establishes that Chief Miles O'Brien is the most important Starfleet officer to ever live.
It really is. I mean, it truly is. I don't know. I mean, we're going to find it's going to happen one day. We're going to find the where they're going to have that moment.
I think it already happened. He won the Dominion War.
They did.
So we see the statues of Boimler, the great bird of the galaxy, and Chief O'Brien. So that's very charming. And also, I think the furthest future we've ever seen. I think this was past where Discovery went.
Right. It's way past. Yeah. So Bob, character of the week. This one just goes straight to Mariner. This is the Mariner episode.
Nice. Well, I'm not going to give it to Mariner, but I'm going to give it to someone because of Mariner. And I'm going to give it to Ransom for stabbing Mariner in the foot like she stabbed Boimler in the foot in the pilot. Passing it down, passing it around, passing it along.
Brilliant. All right, Bob.
Well, Matt, fun to talk Lower Decks with you. We'll see everybody next week for the new episode and for episode 4 of season 1. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening.